Well, CNN is going to make themselves a complete fool of themselves again as all the propagandists over the fake news networks continue to shill for the Democrats. Yet Scott Jennings is the one and only person there who happens to make CNN maybe even watchable, at least just for his clips, as he schools people like Anacon. Get off the screen. As he goes and he schools people like Anna Constant on there. She goes and she shills for these violent radicals that are attacking ICE agents and pretends that the Democrats want nothing to do with it. But all at the same time, they use all this rhetoric that they very likely leads to dog whistling to violent crime. But before we get into that story, I want to go back a little bit. This was 3 years ago today. This is when Merrick Garland stood in front of the United States voters and told them that he authorized the unprecedented assault on Mar-a-Lago for documents. And through all their ups and downs, as the FBI and the DOJ tried to mislead and lie to the American people, here is him first saying that he initially said he wasn't involved, and then he said now that he authorized it himself.
There are, however, certain points I want you to know. First, I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
What a political hack. Hey, these are the same people now that are trying to pretend that Joe Biden didn't take his DOJ and his FBI and go after his political opponents. No, they do not. Remember going after like Donald J. Trump or Peter Navarro or Steve Bannon or any of the other people that are like involved with January 6th and overcharging very minor misdemeanors for long-term felonies? I remember all of that. And now that the Democrats are about to be held responsible for all the actions that they have done, now they're trying to pretend that, the DOJ is being activated against them when they've enjoyed the two-tier justice system for such a long time. I mean, what the FBI and the DOJ did to Mar-a-Lago was unthinkable before it happened. I mean, you go through what they did is they went at an early 3 a.m. raid with the FBI fully loaded with guns. And I remember this was just over documents. And a former president of the United States of America, like they couldn't just go and knock on the door. Instead, they show up with lethal force authorized. And again, to cover this point, is they also lied about this too, is saying, well, lethal force is just generally authorized, right? It wasn't, targeted at Donald J. Trump. Well, but he is a former president, and he has Secret Service guarding his residence. I mean, what were they going to do if all of a sudden the FBI got in a shootout with Secret Service? This is so unbelievably an overreach of the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland. And this is all under the direct course of course, Joe Biden, who also lied and tried to pretend that he had no part of this, yet later documents prove that he was involved, and that this goes on to show what we call like the deep state. Okay, these are these unelected bureaucrats who think that they have complete power over your life and that they are born to rule over you, that their power is supreme. Unlike who you have, what we're supposed to have is like the constitutional republic, where you go and you vote for your leaders then go into Washington, D.C., and then they enact your will. But the reality is that's not often at all how the government works. That the politicians, the ones that are actually supposed to run the government, are more than happy to give it to the deep state. See, because in the end, these people really are cowards. Because they understand that if they are held responsible for their actions, then that they will lose their seat. And that's the only thing they care about, is them losing their power. But it is very hard for these unelected, deep dug-in bureaucrats to lose their power. So the politicians are more than happy to say, you know what? That wasn't me. No, that was go talk to the DOJ, or go talk to the FBI, go talk to the IRS, right? Go talk to OSHA, go talk to any of these other three-letter alphabet soup agencies and watch how far you get with them. But for them, and for what happened with Mar-a-Lago, as this really exposed through Donald Trump just how far and extreme this deep state has become, as they were willing to do this all to a former president of the United States of America. I mean, it was just unthinkable just not a few years ago. And the question then becomes, did they do this because they actually had anything against Donald Trump? Or did they do this because they wanted to stop Donald Trump from becoming elected again for the president of the United States of America? I mean, look how much stuff that they threw at him as soon as he went to run for president, right? This is a lifelong New York Democrat until he decided to run for the Republican Party, right? He's never had any problems with the law or anything against him. All of a sudden, they got an impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, Russia, which we now has also proven has been false. And then they had the January 6th hoax and the boxes hoaxes and all the other hoaxes that they ran after him. I mean, start naming them: Gene Carroll, and the 34 felonies in New York, one after another, all to try to ruin a man who dared to go up against the deep state. But you see, that is the real problem here for the deep state and why they went so hard after somebody like Donald Trump. Because there's nothing they fear more than you, the American people. And there's nothing they fear more than you, the American people, is when you get some billionaire populist who all of a sudden goes up and challenges their unelected authority. And that's ultimately what they were scared of. See, they're not really scared of Donald Trump. Who they're really scared of is you. And so they have to flex their muscles now or lose their power forever. And that is exactly what they tried to do to Donald Trump. But really to warn you that don't you ever even try, don't you even dare ever think about going up against the deep state. If you even dare about it, if you even think about it, we will destroy your businesses. We'll ruin your reputation. We'll go after your family. We'll throw you in jail. We'll do anything it takes to show that you better not go up against us. And that is exactly what the deep state tried to do to Donald Trump, but really do to you. Because then they say, just look at what we can do to Donald Trump. If we can do that to Donald J. Trump, just imagine what we can do to you, right? Who is a big, popular billionaire. And if we can throw him in prison, if we can ruin his businesses, right? If he can destroy his family, this very rich, wealthy, famous billionaire, then imagine what we can do to you, you small person, you little pleb. I mean, just the accusations alone can ruin someone's life. Not many people can afford these very expensive lawyers to defend themselves. All of a sudden, the DOJ decides to throw their entire weight on against the American people. And this was probably the biggest mistake that the deep state ever could have made going after Donald Trump. Because before we try to talk about stuff like this, most people just simply wouldn't believe you. They wouldn't really believe just how deep the deep state was. But Donald Trump brought it to the forefront when they went after him, but really they were going after you. And this exposed corruption to a level to what I call the normies, or the people who watch like the mainstream media and read the newspapers. I think they're being informed that, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't right. Because we're supposed to have equal protection under the law. It shouldn't matter who you are, and it shouldn't matter how rich or how poor you are, and it shouldn't really matter what color your skin is. What really matters is who you are as a person, and then these laws should affect everybody equally. But as many has suspected and said, that's not the way at all that it has worked for quite often. But these laws, they're often only chosen based on who you are. If you're on the right side, right, if you're with the Democrats, then all of a sudden, there's no charges are brought. You have like Hillary Clinton with Benghazi and her private servers, the emails. And then James Comey just decides, hey, you know what? No reasonable prosecutor would ever bring this case, even though that is not his decision to decide. That's an example of the two-tier justice system, as opposed to when they went really after Donald Trump for these documents. And then ironically, at the very same time, Joe Biden was found with documents all over the place. I mean, he had them in his garage where anybody could have access to. And the big distinction between Joe Biden and Donald J. Trump is Joe Biden was vice president, meaning that Joe Biden had no right to these documents. I'm saying that Donald Trump did. Yeah, just like every other president, he has rights, and he has taken documents home, just like every single other president has, including Obama, including Clinton, and including both the Bushes, and probably every president back. And it was done right out in the middle of the day, right out in the open. And so I ask for you, the American people, do you think that this was a legitimate thing? And I think as because Donald Trump is back in president, that most people do not. Most people saw this for what it was. This is the deep state trying to show you that you don't even dare to go up against our power. Remember like what Chuck Schumer said? You remember what he said about Donald Trump? Donald Trump, for sure, for a smart businessman, he is crazy to go up the deep state. If they have 6 ways from Sunday to get you, meaning that our intelligence agencies. And we saw the weaponization there too with the Russia hoax, which now we can prove was what we always thought all along was a hoax. Is they do all the same things they normally do, is they leak all this information out that they created. It would then go to the mainstream media. The mainstream media would run with all the information the deep state leaked. And then it goes up to the Democrats. The Democrats then too, they will go and they will say, well, the fake news is reporting all this stuff. Even though it's all this from the same source, it looks really big because it goes out to all the news agencies. And then the people that originally leaked it, the same deep state goes, well, if all this stuff's reporting, we should open up an investigation. Thus, Russia, right? All these documents leaked out to the mainstream media. All the Democrats ran with it. And then it went back to the deep state. And then they opened Crossfire Hurricane. And they went after Donald Trump mercilessly and all the people in his circle for years. And now, thanks to the release of Tulsi Gabbard and CIA, that we now know and we could prove that this was all made up and it was fake. That the Steele dossier was actually bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton. And now, according to Tulsi Gabbard and the documents that she released, that Hillary Rodham Clinton actually directly ordered it, according to Tulsi Gabbard in the classified documents that she released. And then all back to December 8th, which is so important with the Russia, when these own intelligence agencies said that Russia didn't have the means or the ability to interfere with our elections. And yet also on December 9th, the very next day, that is pulled from the book, the White House book, and then everything else, we go from there. We don't need to rehash that whole thing, but that is essentially what happened. And now we're up to today, 3 years later. And Donald Trump is back to the president of the United States of America because of what they did. Because of how this deep state pushed too far. And unfortunately, it's part of our side because we've allowed this to happen for such a long time. But you can only push people for too far. And when you push them too far, all of a sudden they say, you know what, enough is enough. And they start fighting back. And that's what the Patriots did. Right? Donald Trump had won the popular vote, even after everything that they called him. And then after winning the popular vote, he won all 7 swing states. This is after everything that the deep state threw at him and everything they had in the kitchen sink. And they're still trying to push the exact same nonsense as, suspiciously, right before Russia comes out and all these documents come out. Magically, all of a sudden, the mainstream media and the Democrats all of a sudden are very, very interested in Epstein. When these very same Democrats and these very same mainstream media, right, they had access for the last 4 years. I mean, this is Merrick Garland. This is Chris Wray. All the same people that went after Donald Trump mercilessly in 2024. But these exact same people had the access to all the Epstein stuff then. They're alleging that it's out now. Or if this is all legitimate, if this stuff all truly exists, then why didn't they go after Donald Trump then? Now, I'm not saying nothing happened with Epstein, but this whole idea that it's being brought around somehow like Donald Trump and that they're accusing him of doing these weird things with children, it doesn't add up. Because if that were true, if they had it, one, it would have been leaked, I think, at least to the mainstream media, and two, they wouldn't have wasted their time with January 6th or the boxes hoaxes or any of the other hoaxes, right? They would have gone after Donald Trump for that. And that's what they would have thrown Donald Trump in prison for. But of course they didn't. And I think they did it for very, very obvious reasons, because they have absolutely nothing. And there we go again. I mean, as soon as I talk about this, and that is exactly what happens. Give me just one sec. And okay. And so on this, with the all they did with the Russia and with these hoaxes is now brought Donald Trump back into the president's office. If anybody, thought wrong about Donald Trump and thought wrong about the American people, is that we weren't fighters. They really thought that they could slander us into submission. And they've tried in many different ways. Most of the most famous way, the way they like to do it the most, is they will call you names, right? Just like they did with Donald Trump, and they've done to many of you. Right? They call you a racist or call you a bigot. And when that starts using, all of a sudden you're a Nazi and you're a fascist, and everything else that they can try to accuse you of doing. And when that didn't work, then they try to flex the muscle of the deep state. And they try to go after Donald Trump with all these same hoaxes at the same time. And then when that didn't work, a bullet missed Donald Trump's head by inches. And a second would-be assassin, which is luckily that the Secret Service happened to walk up in front in Florida and saw the gun pointing out of the bush, or who knows what would have happened then. If you want to see the deep state, you're now seeing it. Exactly what we've all been warning about for years. And now that Donald Trump is back, and now that he is fighting these people, we have a first chance to truly win this war that most generations never have an opportunity to do. Because most of the time, what does government do? It grows and grows and grows and grows until it collapses on top of itself. But most time, these great countries, right, the superpowers of the world, there's not very often that they collapse on the outside. Usually they collapse from the inside, from the corruption and from the abuse. And that's exactly what was happening to the United States of America. As they kept taking our manufacturing, sending it overseas, and then they kept taxing. 5 billion or 5 trillion coming in, 7 trillion going out, and no one was allowed to know where this money was going. Then they left our borders open, and then they allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens to pour into our country. And as we're now fighting with the census here, is more and more people being aware, because did you know that census, all it really does is it counts heads? The census does not check if you're an American citizen. And I want to know if an illegal alien is being counted in our census. I mean, isn't that the very definition of foreign interference in our elections? Certainly sounds like that to me. We have New York and California and Texas and other places where they think they have over 1 million illegal aliens. I mean, in Los Angeles County alone, they think there are 1 million illegal aliens there. They believe that California will lose at least 5 seats if illegal aliens weren't counted. And then Democrats alone will lose 20 to 30 seats if illegal aliens were not counted in our census. So no wonder why they're fighting so hard for sanctuary cities. All of a sudden, it makes a lot more sense, or why they're fighting so hard to not have voter ID be part of our elections. And with that, I'm up against a break. When we come back, we're going to get into Scott Jennings and how he smoked the Democrat propagandists over on the CNN about how their rhetoric is targeting ICE agents. You're not going to want to miss that or a whole lot more. We'll be back after this greedy profit break. This is the CASHLOREN Show. Well, Scott Jennings is the only person that really makes CNN almost watchable with his clips that he goes and he takes apart these Democrat propagandists who pretend to be journalists. And on this particular episode, this is when they're trying to defend the violence against the ICE agents, and the Democrats dog whistle for, pretend that they're not any a part of. As he has on here, he has Anna Kasparian, and she's trying to defend the Democrats, and they're not calling for violence, right? Because this is the thing that the Democrats always try to pretend to do, because they are cowards. Is what they'll do is they'll use rhetoric, but they won't actually do the acts themselves. So they'll call these ICE agents, right? They'll call them Nazis, or they'll call them fascists, or they'll call them Gestapo. They'll say all these really nasty things about them, trying to dehumanize them for these other woke liberals to go into to then justify their violence against. And of course, the Democrats do that, but they use this then as cover. They say, well, I didn't call for violence. No, I'm denouncing violence. But when they use these words and when they dehumanize people, they know exactly what they are doing. Because what these ICE agents are doing, they're just enforcing our laws. Now, the Democrats, they don't want these laws enforced. That doesn't change the fact that these are our laws. And so for that reason, the Democrats have gotten away with the two-tier justice system for such a long time that they think that they continue to do so, and they do it by 2 different ways. One way they do it is through their activism, through liberalism, is they will march and they will protest, and they'll have all their nice, pretty signs and all their matching shirts. And now that apparently they're banging dishes together And they have all these pre-written songs to sing. I mean, it's really a pretty sound. It's really beautiful. It is. It's stunning and brave, I would say. I mean, it's truly something that has deeply inspired me, well, at least to mock them. But when that doesn't work, when their activism doesn't work, when they can't slander you into silence through the marches, then the next step is violence. And then the step is also then to use the deep state to go after people under this two-tier justice system. And that's exactly what the Democrats are trying to do now, that they've lost the control of the deep state. So now they're trying to justify violence by dehumanizing people. And every single atrocity, this is how it works. Right? They'll find a way to make the person seem not like a person. I mean, if they call someone like Hitler or a fascist or an existential threat to our democracy, right, acting like the Gestapo, well, then what acts of violence would be off limits? I mean, what would be not okay to stop Hitler in World War II? You see how they lie, but the thing is, they're lying about this now because this isn't Hitler or fascist or Gestapo. This is none of those things. These are our laws that our elected officials put on the books. It's ironic because it's the Democrats who broke our laws, who opened our borders and allowed all these illegal aliens into our country. And now Donald Trump and his administration, exactly like you voted for, are now going and arresting these illegal alien criminals and deporting every single one out of our country. The due process for entering our country illegally is that you get deported exponentially. And we're going to continue to build more alligator Alcatrazes all throughout this country, and it's going to happen as much as the Democrats cry and scream about it. But here in this part here that we have now, Anna Kasparian, is she's going to go and she's going to try to argue for this. But watch how Scott Jennings, how he masterfully tricks her, and then all of a sudden she gives away the gig. So first, here's Scott Jennings' part, and then watch how he sets her up.
Say Republicans right now are trying to recruit and give bonuses to people who want to serve in ICE, and Democrats right now and people on the left are encouraging violence against people who want to serve in ICE.
They are?
And are putting them in harm's way every day.
How
so
exactly?
The two parties and how they're treating ICE agents right now, I think Republicans embracing recruitment of ICE and Democrats encouraging maybe violence.
So we're just going to make a declarative statement like that without providing a single shred of evidence?
The Democrats are pretending so upset that providing a statement without evidence is all of a sudden an issue with the Republican. Republican brings up a statement, but Scott Jennings actually has the facts, and he's going to trick her in a second. But I want to go real quick about how she's trying to say it, because this is the Democrats' playbook. If there's nothing she's doing here that's new or creative. The Democrats, they dog whistle for this violence, and then because they only dog whistle it, because they're too big of cowards to go do it themselves, they instead encourage these radical leftists by saying things like, these are the Nazis kidnapping migrants, right? They're not arresting criminals. No, they're kidnapping. These aren't federal officers. No, see, these are the Gestapo. And see how they use this woke language to trick people into coming to a conclusion that they never would have came to if they would have used the actual rules in our laws. Like, you come to this country illegally, you will get arrested and you will get deported. These are federal police officers. What happened when the January 6th, like when the Democrats all of a sudden were pretending that they're all for law enforcement, but now that the narrative doesn't fit their facts, all of a sudden the Democrats aren't so for law enforcement. Now, just like the Democrats always think they get to do, they think that they get to choose which laws are going to be enforced and which ones are not going to be enforced. And they do that by using the language to make it up as they go along, as she does here. And then now she's going to respond, but watch how quickly she blows up and then she gives away the game.
Myriad stories of ICE agents. Democrats every day are calling them the Gestapo. Do you think that helps or hurts?
Well,
See, that's exactly right. See, that was a perfect setup by Scott Jennings. Is that when you use that kind of language, you are encouraging violence on people.
But when
Now
they're
you're doing
showing
it.
up,
Now you're
yeah,
doing
well,
it.
they are.
I
If they're
assume-
just showing
I
up
assume you condone the violence.
Penske trucks.
Do you condone the
At
violence?
Home Depot. Listen,
You can see her temper just going through the roof, and now she's going to forget that she's supposed to be lying to you, the American people, and she's supposed to be pretending that she's against violence. Because what should she be saying right here instead? She should say illegal aliens were found, and the federal officers, like any criminal, they will go and they will arrest these illegal aliens just like any other criminal, right? If you do any crime in this country, and then you can be arrested. But the Democrats, they have convinced themselves that they are not, that they just going to make up rules. So because they decided that somehow illegal aliens are not illegal aliens, and therefore the laws that we have on the books, it's not arresting criminals, it's kidnapping poor migrants.
Dollars going to that garbage, okay? Those people do not deserve to be treated that way simply because they might be undocumented.
They do not deserve to be treated that way simply because they might be undocumented. No, they are. And again, how she changes the words there. She's got to use undocumented, not illegal alien, because they have to believe that these people are not criminals to justify their crimes. And that's the Democrats' two-tier justice system. And Scott just continues to bring up the heat. Defend who? All right, so the Democrats, what are they doing right there? They're not defending law enforcement, because that's very much what they could be doing. They could be saying that, these are the law enforcement, these are our laws. God bless them for defending our great nation. Instead, no, they call them Gestapo. And they could say that these are illegal alien criminals, but instead what they do is they say, no, these are, migrants, or, they might be undocumented. They're not. They're illegal alien criminals. And they deserve to be arrested, and they deserve to be prosecuted. And it doesn't matter if a Penske truck or a border patrol or any kind of, transportation to arrest and deport these people. That doesn't change what our laws are.
Deserve to be having violent acts committed, rocks thrown at them.
No, they
people
don't.
Trying to
they don't.
Kill
and
them?
those people who do that get arrested, and they should be arrested.
Often they're not, though. And even if they are, they're still ignoring the overall point of how the Democrats are lying to the American people. Just like Scott Jennings pushes her into this corner, where now she's forced to defend on TV these violent illegal criminals and the other illegal aliens. Even if they haven't committed a crime here in the United States, they are still here illegally.
Because they've been told the ICE agents are Gestapo.
Have you considered the fact that in a city like Los Angeles that has a massive immigrant community, when they see...
Yeah, like we said, millions of illegal aliens in Los Angeles that need to be arrested and deported. And the Democrats don't want that to happen because magically our census is not counted by whether you're an American citizen or not.
Their mothers or fathers or family members rounded up, that leads to a lot of rage, and they retire.
Okay, she's about to go off the deep end here. Scott has set her up so perfectly. So Scott's clips are the only thing that make CNN watchable. As now, what she's trying to do, she after she dehumanized all the law enforcement, right, calling them Gestapo. Now she's going to try to use the same woke tactics to humanize these illegal aliens, to try to bring a false sense of camaraderie with the illegal criminals against the people who are enforcing our laws. And then when that doesn't work, she accidentally gives away the gig.
I'm not saying they should. That is criminal. They should.
All right, she is going to say they should though. So take a listen.
Not assault a police officer. Let me just tell you something. Someone messes with my family, I get violent.
Someone say, there you go. Someone gets messing with my family. How dare you? Right? If anybody that goes after my family, I'm willing to get violent. So she's justifying the violence there. Just like 2 seconds ago, she said she was lying when she said that anyone that arrests police officers, that should never happen, and they should be arrested and go to jail. Okay, that was her line. This is her telling the truth because her temper went off the deep end. She forgot that she was supposed to be lying to you, the American voters, about how the Democrats actually think about you as citizens versus illegal alien criminals.
Okay, that's how I feel about family.
Good to know.
I protect family. So don't be surprised when people feel angry when they feel that there's a bunch of feds in their city invading their city,
there's a violent streak in
going
the country
after
right
people
now
who are just daily.
There again, so she's justifying the illegal aliens against the law enforcement. You should expect them to be they should be angry, and you should expect them to be upset. I mean, you're daring to enforce our laws. You're daring to do what the American people voted for. How dare you? The Democrats just decided one day that illegal aliens are no longer illegal. Now, of course, they can't change the laws, so then they just change their words. And when that doesn't work, then they start justifying the violence. See, like I said at the beginning of this, what is liberalism? It starts with activism, it starts with protests, and it starts with marches. And when that doesn't work, it always goes to violence every single time.
That's dangerous talk.
It leads to unrest. It leads to a ton
No,
of
it's
unrest.
more than that.
No,
they are
that's-
physically attacking.
And by the way, it is
There's an
interesting.
800% increase in attacks on ICE agents.
But she gave away the game. These are illegal criminals, and now she accidentally justified everything that we've been saying about the Democrats. This is just like Maxine Waters, right? When she will go and she go, I'm not calling for a civil war, but if you enforce our laws, there's going to be a civil war. See how they play those word games with you. And publicly, the Democrats, they will call out the violence, of course, after it happens. But then 2 seconds later, they're Nazis, they're fascists, the Gestapos. Okay, those kind of words, they have consequences. The Democrats know exactly what they're doing, but they're way too big of cowards to do it themselves. And so instead, they will call out their own to do it for them. They fully understand this. This is why if someone like on the right were to say anything like that, immediately all the Democrats would be enraged. You're inciting violence. But on their side, it's not inciting violence. It's the violence is justified. In the Democrats' mind, if you do something that they don't like, then not only is violence justified, violence is warranted. Violence is expected. So you better not enforce the laws the Democrats don't want you to enforce, because they're not, of course, not calling for violence. But if it happens to happen, right, if violence happens to happen against these law enforcement officers, if they have bricks thrown against them, if they have rocks thrown, if they get shot at, well, then didn't the Democrats try to warn you about enforcing our laws, right? Not calling for violence. But we warned you, if you enforced our laws, this is exactly what would happen. And so you should have just let the Democrats break our laws and there would have been no violence. So that's the Democrats' ultimatum. Starts with liberalism, right? It starts with marches, it starts with protests. When that doesn't work, then they start slandering you. They call you racist, a bigot, a homophobe, Nazi, fascist, white nationalist, extreme, MAGA Republican. And then when that doesn't work, then they escalate again, and they'll try to use the deep state to prosecute you. But in this case, they don't have with Donald Trump in charge. So then they go straight to their last gasp: physical violence. And as we've seen through all these Democrat cities over and over again, right, they look the other way. I mean, how many of you remember CNN standing there and saying, this protest is fiery but mostly peaceful, with a literal building burning behind them, and then mercilessly going after people like January 6th? Yet how many of these BLM activists that actually hurt and harm police officers and burn down their cities, how many of them are sitting in prison right now? How many of them are sitting in the DC gulags? See, exactly. It's the two-tiered justice system that the Democrats have gone to expect. With that, I'm up against a break. When we come back, we have a lot more, including the two-tiered justice system is coming to an end, as this is being with Pam Bondi. She has put a prosecutor. You won't believe who the names that they're going after. And then once you see the name of the prosecutor, this is going to get real for the Democrats really quick. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more when we come back from this break. This is the CASHLOREN Show. We've been talking a lot today about the two-tiered justice system, folks, and how it has benefited the Democrats for a very long time, yet is gone after the enemies of the deep state, meaning you, the American voters, as they haven't applied their laws equally from one side of the aisle to the next. And they tried to flex their muscles and they tried to take down Donald Trump, but really they weren't taking down Donald Trump. Who they were really trying to go after was you, the American people. This is the deep state, these unelected bureaucrats behind like the FBI and the DOJ and all the others, trying to flex their muscles and show that don't you dare. Don't you even try to stand up to us. We will ruin your life if you do. Just like they went after Donald J. Trump. And if you go after Donald J. Trump and you're able to take him out, then you can go, see, we were able to take Donald Trump. Now, he's a multi-billionaire. He's very, very famous. If we can do that to him, just imagine what we can do to you, so don't even try it. But of course, if you're on the right side of the political spectrum, right, if you're like Hillary, Rodney Clinton, then all of a sudden you don't have anything to worry about. All of a sudden James Comey, he does a little, investigation and then decides no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case. It's great to be a Clinton rather than be a Trump. But now times are changing, because now that we have a fair system, which should be, and we have Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, and hopefully as we move into Donald Trump's term, and I've been saying, especially, we need to give them time, is they're not just taking over these giant bureaucracies, but there's very deep-seated Democrat loyalists across every single one of these bureaucracies. You don't just take over a lead of these and all of a sudden everything gets swapped around. And all of a sudden everyone switches loyalties underneath you. And so they've had all of this to fight for too. That's been going on for very many decades. But now things are changing. And part of this that is really ironic because Pam Bondi, she is authorized as special prosecutor of Ed Martin. And maybe you know this name or you don't know this name, but this man is going to be a fantastic prosecutor, I think. And one the deep state is very, very terrified of because he does not believe in their two-tier justice system. And Adam Schiff, who's one of the people who are going to be investigated for a part of this mortgage fraud, absolutely lost his mind because of now he was being put in as prosecutor. And this is Adam Schiff. Here's a couple of his quotes as he was trying to stop Ed Martin from being selected. So nobody embodies Donald Trump's personal weaponization of the Justice Department more than Ed Martin. Okay, this is coming up from Adam Schiff, the man who sat there and told everybody that he had evidence of Russia, but he couldn't tell you the evidence because the evidence was classified. But believe me, bro, I have it, when he never, ever had it. And then you know what Chris Wray and what Merrick Garland did, we don't need to get in that whole mess now, but for the irony for Adam Schiff to talk about weaponizing of the deep state. And I'm doing everything I can to block Ed Martin. I bet you are, because you're scared to death being held responsible. You can find everyone. Ed Martin was the stop the steal lawyer, and he should go easy on people who beat cops. Yeah, right. Again, absolutely lying, just like he lied about Kash Patel. All of a sudden, the Democrats, we called earlier, they start to pretend that they care about law enforcement when it benefits them, but when it doesn't, then all of a sudden, so the law enforcement is the issue, right? The law enforcement is Gestapo, is their new famous word. And the illegal criminals, they're just migrants or dreamers or what's the most woke one I've heard so far? The American undocumented citizen, I think is what one of them called them. I have no idea in the world what that means, but that's what they made up. So this is him. This is Ed Martin as he's going to investigate allegations of mortgage fraud involved Senator Adam Schiff and Letitia James of New York. Okay, and this is huge. So to cover real quick about what this mortgage fraud is what they did is they lied about their primary residences to gain better loans, is the highlight of it. And so many people, right, because of what they do for government, they have to live in certain jurisdictions to have that job. Right? If you in New York, you have to live in New York. Or if you're in California, you have to live in California. If you work in a certain house within a district, you have to live in that district in order to represent that district. That has to be your primary residence. And you don't have to spend all of your time there, right? You can go out to DC and you can go anywhere else. And you can have a second home, a vacation home, as many as you want. But your primary residence has to be in that district or in that state. So this is where the mortgage fraud comes in for both possibly for Letitia James and for Adam Schiff, because they lied apparently on the documents about having more than one primary residence at the same time. And it doesn't work like that. As many of you have known, if you've gone to get a mortgage, there's different rules if it's your primary residence versus if it's your secondary residence, or if you want to do a rental or a vacation home or something like that. There's different requirements and there's different rates for those loans. And then when you sign those loans, you then justify on that yes, this is my primary residence. I mean, I signed that when we signed up for our mortgage. Or you say, we're wanting to do this as a rental home. We're not going to live there. And so there's different rules for that. There's different interest rates and you sign for that. Or this is going to be my secondary home, right? You know how this works. And so does Adam Schiff and so does Letitia James. But what they did instead is that you had Letitia James, who had to say her primary residence was in New York to be the AG, but then she had a primary residence also labeled as outside of New York. And then not only did she have outside in New York to get those loans, but then it looks like she also possibly lied about how many buildings were how many apartments were inside the building. I think she said there was 4 complexes inside instead of 5, which also drastically changed the rules. And the same thing you have with Adam Schiff, who has to be in California, but to get a loan, he did his outside of California also as his primary residence. And they've both been busted red-handed. Now, normally, like many of you would suspect, when these people get busted like this, is that then nothing will happen to them, right? Because they're Democrats. I mean, everybody understands how the 2-tier justice system works. If you're Letitia James, you don't have to worry about anything. But if you're Donald Trump, they will try to destroy your life. Not because he did anything wrong, other than he decided to run as a Republican and defeat Democrats. And that was his true sin. And so they do, all of a sudden, here comes Letitia James, out of most ironically with this mortgage fraud case, brings mortgage fraud against Donald Trump. The problem with her case against Donald Trump was there was no fraud. There was no crime. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. There was no victims. In fact, the people that the Democrats are trying to say were the victims said that there was nothing wrong. They would love to do more visits with Donald Trump. And what do we see in these very deep blue cities then after is you have this AG that wants a certain outcome and then a judge that is more than happy to go along with it. And so they tried to get Trump. Of course, they didn't have enough on criminal, but when you got civil and especially you have that kind of a judge, then all of a sudden things get a lot easier. So they tried to go after him for $500 million. And this, to understand, I don't think they ever thought they could win this. Whenever this appeal gets heard, I'm sure it will go away. So there's everybody else, except these very far left Democrats. But when they did this, that wasn't what this is about. This isn't about winning. This is about punishing anyone who dares to go up against them. So they wanted to get this judgment, and then Trump couldn't secure bonds, and so they were going to take control of his properties and then sell them off. And then even if Donald Trump won eventually and they had to pay him back, he doesn't get the properties back. The properties are still gone. See, that was punishment for Donald Trump to running against a Republican. But fortunately, Donald Trump needs to get somewhat of a reasonable judge, and he was able to get a bond. And of course, Letitia James started to try to stop that too, because remember, this is about punishing Donald Trump. And then out of all the irony out of all of this, it now looks that Letitia James is guilty of far worse than Donald Trump ever was, which of course Donald Trump was nothing. And the Democrats, they learned no lessons from any of this. And then we have, this is Zoran Mondani, who's probably going to be the next mayor of New York. He posts this: Attorney General James took the Trump fraud and rampant corruption and won. And she's not going to win. This is going to get dismissed. They know it. Everybody knows it's going to go away. This was blatant. I think, and maybe you agree, you don't agree, this was blatant trying to interfere with an election. It's about all these cases in an election year against the frontrunner for the Republican Party. So it's a wonder that Trump's politicized DOJ is now coming after her. Again, this is not politicized. Politicized was before what they tried to do to Donald Trump. This is equal justice under our law. Is it not? It doesn't matter who you are. Isn't that what the Democrats have said all this time? That if there is no one above the law. I'm pretty sure Hillary Clinton and many others, including Letitia James, has said that. So doesn't that not include now Letitia James? I mean, won't she have her day in court? Instead of what we're used to with the 2-tier justice system, where what they'll do is they just won't prosecute, they won't investigate. And so it's the same thing as being legal, even though it's technically not. And the Justice Department has subpoenaed an office to Letitia James, who sued Donald Trump on fraud. One of the 2 subpoenas to Miss James, New York's Attorney General, relates to the civil fraud case she won against President Trump, which leads to a $500 million penalty, which we already talked about, is going nowhere. Welcome to find out. Because they're going to do into a grand jury on this. And then we have MSNBC. They are freaking out also about these grand juries, as listen to how they respond.
Nothing scarier for a citizen to get a subpoena or find out that they're being investigated by a federal criminal grand jury. It's terrifying, and here's why. Grand jury investigations sweep broadly. They gather terabytes of information, and they're very efficient at going through it. And the problem there for people is that they may be investigating issue number one and then stumble across never before known issue number two when going through all those documents.
See, they're terrified because they know what's about to happen. Is they've gotten so used to the two-tier justice system that they think that they can just do anything they want and have absolutely no responsibility for anything that they've done. But now that no longer works. They failed on Donald Trump. Now they should be held responsible. I mean, I wonder how long the Democrats are going to cry. There is, that no one's above the law. And that if you have committed a crime, it doesn't matter if you're attorney general. It doesn't matter if you're a senator. It really doesn't matter if you're next president now. That no one is above the law. That's what the Democrats said when they're going after Donald Trump. Well, now that pendulum has swung fully back the other way. The difference was Trump had done nothing wrong. Trump had committed zero crimes. And it looks fairly obvious now that Letitia James very likely did. And Adam Schiff very likely did. And he is on record. Some of the statements that he has made is very, very suspicious when he's talked about having primary residence here versus primary residence over there. And I think his own PR team said that he had 2 primary residences, and that's not how that works. So they're going to go into this deeper, and it looks like, thanks to we opened up the show with Merrick Garland going after Donald Trump, that now a lot of these cases can be brought in Florida and not in D.C. So welcome to Screw Around and welcome to find out. I was right, Democrats. No one is above the law. And speaking of no one being above the law and the Democrats, we have another huge story, of course, getting bigger here in Texas. And this is where Texas is going to move forward to try to bring more House seats for the Republican Party before the 2026 midterms. And the Democrats, they had put all their eggs in this basket because all their legal battles have failed. The judicial coup has failed. And now the only thing that they have left to stand on is they're hoping to take back the House so they can shut down the government for 2 years of Donald Trump's administration. But that is looking more and more grim. Remember back in Wisconsin when they took back Supreme Court and then they tried to gerrymander in Wisconsin and that failed. Well, now Texas is fighting back. And so are many other Republican states. And because of this, what the Democrats did, of course, is try to obstruct the will of the American people again, because they think that they are morally superior and they think they are morally right, instead of what our country is supposed to work, is where you vote your leaders and then they carry out your will. The Democrats don't see that way at all because they think that they are smarter, better, faster than you. Okay, never ever doubt that for a single second. The Democrats think that they are born to rule. And for that reason, they have justified anything that they do to move towards those ends. And all their bags of basket, remember, in the House. And so now Texas is trying to bring up this vote to add the 5 districts. And then what did Texas they do is these Democrats then fled the state, hoping that they could stop the vote against the will of the American people. And Abbott and Paxton are fighting back. And the Democrats were given a timeline, they didn't show up. It then went to the Texas Supreme Court, and they also didn't show up. And so now it looks like the FBI may get involved, and they can be arrested. And I want to understand about this arrest. This isn't, so far, is not a criminal arrest. This is what they call like a civil servant arrest. Where essentially they'd be arrested and they'd be taken back to their house to hold for the votes. But this is going to get a whole lot more for them because the Texas is continuing to double down against everything that the Democrats have done. As they're warned, and now this is what's going to happen to them. They were fined $500 a day. They also lost their right to direct deposit. So now they're going to have to come in and get their checks, which of course they will immediately be arrested for. They've also lost 30% of their operational budgets. And now Texas is moving to remove them from their seats. And if this backfires the way we think it could, And then once this backfires on them, now Texas is saying that they think instead of getting 5 seats for Republicans, they might get 8. And a lot of other states like Florida and others are also moving to move districts to the Republican Party. And I say, good. You know, if that's, the Democrats have done it for years. Okay, they've gerrymandered all their states to an extreme. So the Democrats can do it, then why can't the Republicans do it? Right? All fair in love and war. And now you're going to find out. And that we're at the end of the main show. And so I want to appreciate every single one of you. If you consider this, take a moment and subscribe to the show. It's only a few dollars a month and help support us to defeat the corporate media and bring you the stories that they won't want to tell you. I want to thank all my supporters. We'll be back again Monday at 8 p.m. Then we're going to continue, it looks like, on TikTok, and then you Rumble is very soon here on the after show. So that, I hope you have a great weekend. If you're not there, we'll see you on Monday. This is the CASHLOREN Show.